walking in the awareness of the highest reality. That's a vow that that's what I'm going to turn towards, walking towards that, and finding all the areas in my life that are blocking the level of that reality.
Keep watching to learn more.
Book 4 in the new Thinking Aloud dialogue series is Charles T. Tart, 70 Years of Exploring Consciousness and Parapsychology, now available on Amazon.
New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu. You can now download all 8 copies of the New Thinking Aloud magazine for free, or order beautiful printed copies. Go to newthinkingaloud.org.
Thinking Aloud. Conversations on the leading edge of knowledge and discovery with psychologist Jeffrey Mishlove.
Hello and welcome. I'm Jeffrey Mishlove. Today we're going to look at the 8 limbs of yoga. With me is Dr. Leanne Whitney, who is a teacher of yoga teachers. She teaches yoga philosophy, which is what we'll be talking about today. She is the author of Consciousness in Jung and Patanjali. Welcome, Leanne.
Thank you, Jeff. Nice to be with you again.
It is a pleasure to be with you once again. And I know you have a real passion for classical yoga philosophy, and really the yoga classic is the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is where the 8 limbs are articulated.
Yes, that's right. Patanjali basically, I want to say collated. He took the Upanishads. He took Buddhism. You can see the influence of a lot of other texts inside his, and he put a bunch of information together, authored 195 lines, and it's definitely an enduring piece of scholarship. And at least in the United States, most yoga teacher trainers have a yoga philosophy, yoga psychology module as part of their yoga teacher training. Mm-hmm.
So why are they called limbs to begin with?
So in Patanjali's vision, basically it's a vision of wholeness, that reality is pure consciousness, and that consciousness is the totality of being. So there is nothing outside of it. It's singular, it's eternal, it's absolute. So his idea of limbs is just like a baby grows in a womb, that all these limbs will grow together. So I'll go through the 8 limbs, shall I?
Yes.
So he has the yamas, the niyamas, asana, the physical practice, pranayama, the breathing exercises, pratyahara, which is sense withdrawal, and then he has dharana, dhyana, samadhi, which is concentration, meditation, and absorption. So a lot of times people think of these as steps, and
like a sequence.
Yeah, kind of like a sequence, absolutely. And if you want to look at it as steps, I would encourage people to hold that very loosely, because limbs is really the more accurate translation. As one works on the asana, as one works on the breath, as one sort of retrieves projection and pulls one's senses inside, sort of all of it is growing. The body of yoga is all growing at the same time. Mm-hmm.
Well, 8 limbs almost reminds me of a spider.
Spider.
Not that was intended, I presume.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But I do think that metaphor with like just a body growing. A body growing, and all the limbs, when one is in the womb, are growing at the same time, yeah.
Now, Yama and Niyama are the first 2, and you defined the other 6, but we never defined Yama and Niyama.
Yes, and they take a bit more definition. We can unpack all of those limbs, actually. But so Yama is the god of death in the Katha Upanishad, well, in the mythology overall, but in the Katha Upanishad, which is one of the most prominent texts. So it's interesting that Patanjali actually starts at the end. If you think of death as the end, that's how he opens his path. And in my opinion, it's sort of similar to the way that he opens the whole text with the word now, atta, now, present moment. And then now this eightfold path the end is going to be the beginning. So it's it's circular because it's built upon a foundation of wholeness. So it's reaching out to people who are suffering or separated out of that wholeness and sort of calling them back into the wholeness that they already are. Again, so it's not achieving something other. It's more of a clearing away of blockages. So those yamas, I'll list them for you. It is nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, walking in the awareness of the highest reality, a term called brahmacharya, and then non-greed. And again, why it's profound, in the same way as he starts the text with the word now, and as we know, right, Ram Dass, be here now, or Eckhart Tolle, the power of now. There's so much potency in the present moment. And in this, his description of these yamas, he is talking about the universality, the universal principles that Brahman, actually, we should go back and define that term as well.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's a big one. Let's do that, shall we? Yoga philosophy is one of the 6 orthodox Hindu philosophies that is rooted in the Upanishadic tradition, where Brahman is the term for God. But as a Westerner, we have to hold that very loosely because it's not a Judeo-Christian type of God. It really translates as the absolute or pure consciousness, not like a patriarchal God in the sky sort of judging with fire and brimstone.
I suppose it may be hard for Westerners to even grasp a concept that comes from another culture.
Yes, I would say that's actually, it's so true because it's so different. And for actually yoga teachers who are born in India and that come to teach us in the West, I think it's also very important that they know how split our mind is because of the split between science and religion and because of our split between heaven and earth. The Western mind is dealing with splits that the Eastern mind isn't dealing with. And because we have splits upon splits upon splits, we're trying to grasp after this concept, looking through the filters of all those splits. So it's actually probably more challenging, well, definitely more challenging for us to get to than someone, let's just say, who's suffering, but born out of that culture, right? Because Brahman would have been taught to them from a very early age.
And also, I suppose it's fair to say that it's a very ancient culture. These terms, these deities, evolved in their use over millennia.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, the Rig Veda, right, 1500 years old, 1500 BCE, right, before the current era. So it's very ancient, absolutely. And again, a lot of streams of thought, 6 orthodox philosophies, Patanjali being one. And again, he utilizes this term Yama as the beginning of this eightfold path, and it definitely dovetails for sure into that Katha Upanishad.
Well, I think of Brahman with my Western mind as being the essence of the univeresse.
Yes. And essence is great. I think you and I talked about this before. So that's a Latin term where ESSE, the etymology of that term essence, means to be or is or I am. So it does, and that's what Brahman is. It's being, the reality of being, which also equates to consciousness in that system of thought. So in other words, consciousness is all there is. And again, that's really hard for Westerners to understand, being brought up in a model where consciousness is epiphenomenal. It's a product of the brain. But in that system of thought, knowledge is structured in consciousness, and consciousness is the reality of our being.
Now, you mentioned the term brahmacharya as being one of the yamas. I was originally led to believe that the yamas are all the things you don't do. You don't steal, you don't lie, you don't inflict violence on others. And brahmacharya, I thought, meant you don't engage in sexual activity.
Right. It is often interpreted that way. Now, obviously, Patanjali is going to be read at, so I want to say the level, from the point of view of the person who's actually reading the text. Yeah. Yes, we don't want to steal, but what I'm trying to say here is that Brahman, because it is singular, yes, eternal, absolute, there is no other, and it's self-illuminating, it's not stealing from itself. It's not possessing something other than what it is. Mm-hmm. It's the pure ground. It doesn't go outside of itself. So all that, the idea of stealing can only be happening in, Patanjali uses the term vrittis, the modifications of the mind and the habit patterns. The only thing that can steal it is something that would even conceptually believe it was other than it. Mm. Do you follow me there?
Well, I do, but we're getting into some dangerous territory here. It's reminding me of the time I interviewed the Tibetan Lama Chogyam Trungpa, who at the time was a chain smoker, and I called him on it. I said, look at you, you're supposedly an enlightened Buddhist monk, and you're chain smoking. And he said, well, when you're enlightened, you can do anything. So would it mean that if I'm an enlightened yogi, I can steal because I realize that there's nobody else but me anyway?
Now we're definitely pointing to the nuances, because the only game we're ever going to play this against is ourself. Mm-hmm. So to the degree that we would ever lie or be, let's just say, out of balance and acting some kind of theft or something. Again, I already listed the yamas truthfulness.
Yes.
It really is absolute in this tradition. It is consciousness, pure perception. And again, Patanjali uses other terms interchangeably with consciousness, one of them being perception, seeing. So it's pure perception. You see what I mean? So if one is lying to oneself,
I think part of the issue that we're struggling with here, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it has to do with the fact that Westerners largely encountered these philosophies in the Victorian era and tended to interpret many of these things through the lens of Victorian morality. So the do's and do nots began to seem like, the Ten Commandments or something like that. And I gather what you're saying is there's a much deeper philosophical thinking behind it. It's not just about do this and don't do that.
No, that's where, so if we go back to Brahman, that term allows for no metaphysical splitting of reality. There is no other. Mm-hmm. So there really is no subject in relationship to an object. Now, objectification can be used for a period of time as a learning curve, but in the ultimate reality of being. So there's nothing imposing from the outside. Either one is going to, the collective, individually, we're going to embody that power of pure consciousness in its truth, in its non-possessing nature, in its non-greed, or we're not. But the only person or collective we're playing it against is ourselves. Because in the ultimate, I want to say, state of being, there is no separation. So that defilement is not happening at the core. It's only happening during the experience by a conceptual error. Does that all make sense?
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that I need to understand if I steal something from you, I'm really hurting myself.
That's right. That's right. Or if I lie to myself about some level of, like you're pointing to, of the Tibetan master there. If one is to lie to oneself about anything, you're only hurting your own system, and the level of clarity that one could walk through the world with, as opposed to...
So one might say then, with regard to the yamas, niyamas, that what it's all about is being good to yourself in the best of all possible ways.
If we go back to Patanjali's term of kaivalya, that resting upon oneself, that gentle rest is facilitated by that being kind to oneself in the best of all ways. And oneself, again, becomes the collective. Mm-hmm. We have a very individualistic way of viewing the world in Western society. Yeah. And for sure, I think that evolution can be seen as we go from the agrarian society into industrial society, the haven and the heartless world, where people were really in this insular family environment. Mm-hmm. Once we came into homes and, off the fields, so there was less of a communal nature. And as we have evolved in Western society, we've become more and more isolated. And that idea of a separate self, grasping is its nature. That's what it knows to do. That's what it's trained to do, because everything is objectified outside of it.
It's very strong. In the United States, we have this pioneering spirit and this notion of rugged individualism. And you seem to be suggesting that the yoga philosophy emerged from a very different culture.
Extraordinarily different culture. Because again, wholeness is its base. Pure consciousness is the ground. So it's teaching in its own culture, it's teaching people, I want to say, who were at least exposed to those teachings. And as we grow up, we're exposed to consciousness is something that the human ego is privy to.
Reminding me of something I read when I was an undergraduate and studied anthropology. One of the anthropology textbooks was a study of a little village in India near the Himalayan mountains, where the people there believed that if they lived a very, very bad life, they would be reborn as an American.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, I would say, native indigenous cultures who look at what's happening in the United States and see the pain and suffering that ensues from the cultural conceptions. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. So let's move now to some of the other limbs.
Okay. So he opens with the yamas, which is basically the end and the qualities, if you will, of Brahman. And then he moves on into the niyamas, which are those are more akin to sort of laws, if you will, or actually, if I could just say one more thing so in his sutras, as he goes from the yamas to the niyamas, he speaks to the great vows. And again, because there is no other, in some sense we can say that's the vow consciousness makes throughout its energetic field. I'm not going to steal from you. If you understand that, you don't steal from me. And again, I'm speaking in a dualistic language there, but you see what I'm saying? As it unfolds its enfolded nature, as it moves out into manifestation, that's the comfort of us doing the yoga practice and grounding back into that unity, that it's there, that there is no possession, no stealing, no Yahweh like God. You see what I mean?
No vengeance.
Right, exactly. Non-violence, truthfulness, none of that to me is in that term. So I just wanted to mention that. So he moves on, he calls it the great vow, and then he goes into, and by the way, that's across all populations. It has nothing to do about being wealthy. He talks about that great vow is for all classes of people. It's anybody.
So it's to me, it sounds like what you're saying is that the practice of yoga involves a vow or a commitment that one makes to oneself.
To oneself, sure, to the depths of oneself, yes. I think we could say. And that's why in those yamas, the fourth yama is that brahmacharya, which translates basically to walking in the awareness of the highest reality. That's a vow that that's what I'm going to turn towards, walking towards that, and finding all the areas in my life that are blocking the level of that reality. And so when he moves into the niyamas now, he talks about purity, contentment. He uses the term tapas, which is often translated as austerity, but it's basically accepting pain as a path for purification, that sometimes we're going to have to sit through some painful knots that are in the psyche in order to let them go, to release. Tapas, then self-study, which to me is study of the small self, but also study of the scriptures that come from the rishis, because again, the self, capital S self, which is another translation of Brahman, that's the totality, the reality of being. So studying the small self and the capital S self, or the relative and the absolute, so to speak.
And you mentioned the term the rishis.
Yes. So that's a term for, it means seers. And those were the original scribes of the Upanishads, the Vedas, and that's the term used because basically they were seeing from the inside of reality, if you will. Again, it's not this taking an object from the outside and speculating about its basis. It was a total involution of thought form and the ability to see from the inside. I believe there's a term anubhava, which is this idea of seeing from the inside, yes. And again, there's so much logical consistency throughout the whole body of work. That's why Patanjali also, I believe, uses perception and seeing interchangeably with consciousness. So it's leading everyone to their rishi nature, if you will. And then the last niyama is Ishvara Pratyahara, which basically means dedication to God, surrendering to God, or surrendering to the highest self, if you will.
Okay.
And I just want to circle back, if you don't mind, because when you asked about that, the celibacy, it is often thought of that way. And from one perspective, of course, we don't want to be expending our energy in a committed yoga practice. One doesn't want to expend their energy in ways that aren't aiming one towards that yoking. So if excessive sexual energy is something that somebody would be engaging with, certainly that would be up for consideration.
Well, you've just brought up an important notion, which is that the very word yoga, Sanskrit word, has the same meaning, or this has the same origin as our word yoke.
Right, that's right. So yuj, that is the etymology of that term, to yoke, to harness. And again, now, throughout many of the texts, you can see it. Once again, in the Katha Upanishad, you can see it in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna and Arjuna are on a chariot with horses, and it's this idea of harnessing the horses. It's a metaphorical, gimmick that's used, so to speak, because what we want to do. So all these mental modifications that are running through five sensory perception to the appearance of an external world or a separate world. We want to harness all those thoughts that are just running in multiple directions towards multiple things, and they want to be harnessed and yoked back so one actually can still the mind at will and then use thought at will as well. So the energy isn't just going all over the place.
Okay.
So that harnessing, it's a really...
So those are the yamas and the niyamas.
Yes. And then the third limb is the asana, which is the Hatha yoga practice.
Many people think that's what yoga is.
Sure. A lot of people think that's what yoga is, especially, again, in any sort of Euro-American kind of culture, probably Australia as well, because it's very, very big.
People talk about yoga studio culture. That's what people do in the studio.
Yes. They do. They also do bhakti, though. Well, at least in Los Angeles, where I come from. So bhakti yoga. Maybe we could take a minute to explain some of the other yogas. Now, and bhakti is the yoga of devotion, and in fact, now I just mentioned it also in the niyamas. Remember, the last niyama was dedication to God. So there's a couple sutras where you can really see that Patanjali infiltrates other kind of yoga practices. Now, these are other schools. Yeah. Bhakti yoga is a school unto itself. Now,
and that, if I recall correctly, that niyama of dedication to God was called Ishvara
Pratyahara, yeah.
Ishvara Pratyahara.
Pratyahara, yeah.
But Ishvara is the name of the supreme deity, is it not?
Yes, it is. It's certainly the one that Patanjali invokes, yes, as the supreme Purusha that has no defilements. Yeah. Yep, so we have Bhakti Yoga. Trying to think what else is big in the West. Jnana Yoga, which is yoga of knowledge. I would definitely see that in Patanjali's text.
And in a sense, I think that the new Thinking Aloud videos are an example, more or less, of Jnana Yoga. We're dealing with knowledge here.
Yeah, absolutely. I would absolutely agree with that. Yep. And then Karma Yoga, which is following one's karmic path in order to, again, to head one towards embodiment. And that would be performing service in the world. Ram Dass was a big teacher, certainly, of the karmic yoga path, I believe. And then, so Hatha yoga also is its own school. Now, this is Patanjali's third limb. So he brings it in, just like he folds in bhakti and karma and jnana as well.
And people also hear of Kundalini yoga.
Kundalini yoga, absolutely. Yep, that's its own separate set of schools.
How would you define that?
Kundalini yoga. It's not something I actually practice myself, but there is, I believe, a lot of breathing practices involved in that, and there's asana practice involved in that as well. And it works with definitely the energetic system. One wants to open the Kundalini in the Sushumna Nadi.
In other words, to awaken the subtle energies, the chakras and the other organs of subtle energy in the body.
Yes, absolutely. But I do want to say, I do feel that that's implied in all yogas. Okay. Because that's that could be one blanket way of stating that's what yoga is doing, is opening these different people have different draws to the different paths. Some people like to sit there and chant, but that chanting and that devotion to God is also offering the opening as well.
So in a sense, the 8 limbs of Patanjali's yoga apply to all these other types of or schools of yoga.
I would say absolutely. Absolutely. Again, because it's the underpinning psychology. It's one of the 6 orthodox Hindu philosophies. Yep. So I believe it's an orthodox philosophy for a reason. Yeah. So we have the asana, and then pranayama, which is the breathing techniques. Yes. And now the asana and the breathing techniques are fostering. Again, it's all fostering the mind-body unity. But those, I think we can point to those limbs even more specifically, that the calming of the nervous system and the ability to take a comfortable seat in the body are crucial to the whole idea behind this philosophical system. And then after pranayama, he lists pratyahara, which is sense withdrawal. And again, that's also a crucial component. So these first 5 limbs are pretty much more external than the last 3, and we'll get into those in a minute. But really, when we are suffering, one of the crucial components, and we get this very clearly in Jungian psychology as well, is the idea of projection. That which I don't know about myself, I am projecting out into the world. So this sense withdrawal is, yes, absolutely, withdrawing from the five physical senses, touch, taste, sight, that are running out to grab objects. But I want to just say even the deeper layer of that is all the projection that goes with that to run out to something that appears or perceived as the other.
It's very seductive, the sensory organs.
Yes, they are. And I mean, if one reads Patanjali as a non-dual text, because it can be read both ways, and we look at the end and how he ends with Shakti, and you can see where the doorway just opens to Tantra from there. Then eating that peach, or making love to a lover, or holding one's child, the beauty of having the 5 sensory perceptual system in order to engage and be in this world in that way. He's not asking us to eradicate it forever. Well, actually, that would be a big scholarly argument around the text. Is that what he's saying? Is he saying that you're out of the world completely? I believe when read through a non-dual lens, that's not what he's saying. He's saying temporarily suspend these senses. Because what you need to do is get yourself out of the objectification, out of that idea that heavy materialism, that my senses are running out to grasp material reality. So when you approach it later in a more refined way, consciousness is now the basis of the experience.
So after Pratyahara, then we get into the more mental disciplines.
Now we're more internal. This is concentration, meditation, and absorption, or Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi. This is definitely more internal, and now we're involuting the mind even further inward. Because again, some of the ultimate vision of this text is to remove all objects from the horizon of awareness, because pure consciousness will have no alternative but to reveal itself. Because Brahman is absolute. So when I take the energy that's running uncontrollably out to an external appearance, when I harness that energy and take it back, that's how the channels open, if you will, or how the power comes back into the system in a different way, to allow what we were talking about at the beginning, the yamas, this idea of a wholeness, of a universality that underpins the whole philosophy.
To me, it sounds like what you're saying is that at this point, when we have withdrawn the senses from external whatever, we begin the process of ending this game of hide and go seek that we're playing with ourselves. We begin to confront ourselves, our deep self directly, our source.
I love that way of looking at it. Yeah. It is a game of hide and seek because Patanjali, again, he doesn't use the term unconscious like we do in Jungian psychology. The unconscious is, even though Jung didn't claim his metaphysics, I believe it's Collected Works 5, you can get one paragraph where he really describes the unconscious as real. To him, it's real.
Yeah.
But Patanjali, he doesn't use that term. He uses avidya, which, if I could break that term down, vidya is wisdom. And because perception and seeing is so crucial to the system of thought, seeing and wisdom are interchangeable there. When you put an A before a word, it negates it. So it really means non-wisdom or non-vision. So your hide-and-go-seek metaphor is perfect. That avidya is hiding the actual reality. And again, so it's not something that we gain. If anything, we're losing things. We're losing all the constructs that were created to hide or that are veiling the ultimate reality.
Which is sometimes referred to as Maya.
Yes, that's right. Patanjali doesn't use that term, but often Maya is used as that idea of the veil. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep.
So many people think, well, meditation is meditation, but it's broken down into 3 different limbs.
Right, because Patanjali's meditation isn't just about insight. One, for sure, is going to gain insight along the way, but his process of meditation is an invitation to still the fluctuations of the mind. Mm-hmm. Not all meditations offer that invitation, but that's his. Mm-hmm.
So there's the, what are they called in Sanskrit?
The last 3 limbs?
Yes.
Dharana, Dhyana, Samadhi.
Dharana, and so let's talk about Dharana.
Okay, so that's concentration.
Mm-hmm.
So the ability to fix the mind on one point. So I don't know if you've ever heard the term drishti, focal point. Like you've done asana. Mm-hmm. Yes. So when you're doing the asana, and let's just say your focal point is the tip of your nose or the tip of your finger. It's a similar idea, but when you're sitting in your meditation practice, you're going to choose one object to focus. You're going to concentrate on that object. Okay. And over time, as that object continues to appear and there's less busyness, then one is able to meditate on that object in a more, I want to just say a more viable way because of the stillness involved, and then that's leading towards the reabsorption or the samadhi. Mm-hmm. So so let's just say this is the vrittis, this is the moving mind, and you're going to settle the mind on one point. That's the invitation. Choose something that's going to hold your attention, something that feels good to you, that you're going to want to use, because this isn't a path. It's not Mick yoga. It doesn't happen overnight. This is something that one commits to with vigor for a good period of time in order to actually feel the results, that harnessing. So you're going to choose the focal point, and you're going to be able to, concentrate after a good period of time. That concentration is going to remain steady, and then one is going to meditate into the gross and more subtle aspects of that object. And then as all those gross and subtle aspects, again, we gain insight into that, but you're able to stay non-attached all the time to the insights. This is all going to slow down and absorb itself back into the field out of which it arose. And I gather the preceding 5 limbs are all helping you to achieve the ability to really concentrate. Absolutely. Again, they're limbs, so they all are working in tandem. That the asana helps one to be able to take a comfortable seat, but also, again, those poses are all metaphorical. Yeah. So finding the balance, using the breath to calm the mind, and again, to be able to sit. So some days, let's say, because it sounds easier than it is, right? Oh, sit, concentrate, meditate, but that's why it's a long-term path, because it really isn't easy. And if there are a lot of splits in the mind, which we have, again, right? We talked about that science is split from religion. The subject is split from the object. Heaven is split from earth. It's a me-you game. Like we are sitting in a lot of splits. Now, all of those, we could say, let's use a Western lens for a minute, are sitting inside some kind of complex, some kind of activated habit pattern that's going to move on its own to still all of those fragmented aspects of mind, so to speak, from the relative point of view. It's going to take a minute, and it isn't necessarily easy. That's why Patanjali speaks to the tapas, that austerity, that ability to be able to sit through the pain in order to release everything that's been bound up in there.
I mean, I have heard that most people can't really concentrate for 30 seconds.
Right. I think that's very true. I have so many clients that come to me, I have ADHD. And I'm like, put your phone down. Like our whole culture actually is encouraging us to have a busier, as fast as we're importing yoga and Buddhism and the meditative practices, we're at the same time, we're also getting more red dots on our phone and more dopamine hits from all the social media that a lot of us engage in. So.
But then I presume that the stage of Dharana, concentration, is really a prerequisite for entering into the next stage of Dhyana.
Yes, absolutely. That's why he has them. And he also speaks to it as so Samyama, he uses this term, which is, as one progresses on the path, that concentration, meditation, and absorption, they're all enfolded together. And then one is able to really concentrate, meditate, and become absorbed in what one wants to focus oneself on. And, perhaps that's where it dovetails into remote viewing. But that must be what remote viewers have the capacity to do in order to gain insight into whatever is happening at the signal.
To perform samyama.
Yeah.
Now, how do you define samyama?
Yeah, it's basically the combination of concentration, meditation, and absorption.
I see. Yeah. So in other words, even to begin to do samyama, you have to achieve samadhi.
I would say you are absolutely right there. So a level of samadhi is already in play by the time one is...
Yeah, because most of the remote viewers I know are not yogis. They don't go through all of this. Some of them for the very first time. In fact, many of them sit down, they close their eyes, they do remote viewing and do beautifully right off the bat.
Right, but I think it's 4.1, Patanjali does say you can come into this lifetime with some of these special powers, if you will.
Yeah.
So it isn't necessarily that one has to go through a rigorous,
We haven't even begun to talk about past lives.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But so some people can absolutely, it can come, some of these things can come easily to some people, not so easily to others.
In other words, many people are born with talents, and it might well be that they worked hard in a previous lifetime to cultivate those talents.
Right. That's right. And it will show back up. And I mean, karma is a big part, for sure, of the whole vision of this philosophy.
And it's certainly the case. Many people struggle and never really feel that they have a handle to do remote viewing, and for other people it comes quite naturally.
Right. Those psychic abilities, clairaudience, clairvoyance, Patanjali definitely speaks to those, where I think, this is your whole body of work is in that field of parapsychology.
Yes.
It's parapsychology. It's outside of the field of Western psychology. See how Patanjali unfolds it. He unfolds astrology. He unfolds parapsychology into his psychology. It's a much more emboldened, from our perspective, but again, holistic.
Which is why I feel that if anyone is serious about studying parapsychology as a modern scientific discipline, they should pay attention to these ancient traditions.
Yeah, I bet you they can gain a lot from doing that, for sure. Yep. And also, again, Patanjali teaches to the fact that these powers are not the end of the game, so to speak. This is what you aren't doing the yoga path to gain the powers. The powers will come. And I feel like, again, he does his students justice by explaining that. But he's also very clear. This is not what you want to hold on to. This isn't the big game here. Because at any time, any of those samskaras or the vasanas can activate. And if one wants to get, again, this non-grasping, we're going to go back to the non-possessive, non-grasping. It shouldn't be, taken a hold of by a so-called ego.
So in other words, if a samskara gets activated, it's some sort of an unconscious tendency that you haven't dealt with that might rise up to the surface. And just when you think you're close to enlightenment and you're using your siddhis, or let's say remote viewing abilities for the good of the world, some sort of selfish instinct might come up and pull you back.
Well, exactly. And again, from this system of thought, this is what we always were to begin with. This is the wholeness is the given. Yeah. It's the fragmentary thought and illusory perception that we're looking to eradicate. So you can't, why would you take ownership of it, again, from that grounded perspective? It makes no sense from that point of view.
Yep.
Now you're just going to cause more pain again.
Well, I gather that within various schools of yoga, there are different approaches here. Some schools, like the tantric traditions, seem to place more emphasis on the cultivation and application of the siddhis, and other schools feel that they're an obstruction, an obstacle to achieving enlightenment.
Right. And again, even the term achieving enlightenment, I have a lot of, I struggle with that.
Ram Dass has often said there's nothing to achieve.
Right, exactly. It's a letting go of. So I'm in Patanjali's camp, probably, maybe obviously, which is why I so love the text, they will come. Actually, there's no alternative in one sense for them not to come. Because as one settles all this, one is resting upon oneself, which is pure consciousness where the knowledge is structured in it. So things will come up. Again, he speaks to prajna and this idea of non-dual wisdom, non-dual insight that one gets. That's, now we're back to the rishis, that one is actually seeing from the inside. You're not going around objects of knowledge. You're seeing from the inside. And to begin to hang on to that is just to cut yourself off at the knee again.
Well, I have heard the term from Buddhism, it seems related, prajna paramita, which I understand, I like the term because it has the same word paramita as in parapsychology. I think it means the wisdom of going beyond. And it sort of seems to imply that wherever you are, go beyond, go another step.
Right. Going beyond anything that's constructed. And again, even in Western neuroscience, right? The tertiary processes that lights up on these fMRIs. Like we can really test very well these correlations, the neuronal correlations of when the mind is firing. But this idea of going beyond isn't anything to do with building knowledge. It's about letting go of any constructs. So one is relaxing back into the field where knowledge is actually structured. And in my opinion, if we have any hope in hell of reversing any of the problems environmentally, we're going to have no alternative but to keep going further down the invitation that yoga offers.
The invitation to reunite with our source.
Absolutely.
Well, Leanne Whitney, once again, a very profound and beautiful discussion about one of the richest and most important, and I have to say most influential traditions in human history.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure, Jeff, always to be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us.
Book 4 in the new Thinking Aloud dialogue series is Charles T. Tart, 70 Years of Exploring Consciousness and Parapsychology, now available on Amazon.
New Thinking Aloud is presented by the California Institute for Human Science, a fully accredited university offering distant learning graduate degrees that focus on mind, body, and spirit. The topics that we cover here. We are particularly excited to announce new degrees emphasizing parapsychology and the paranormal. Visit their website at cihs.edu. You can now download all 8 copies of the New Thinking Aloud magazine for free, or order beautiful printed copies. Go to newthinkingaloud.org.